Welcome to On the Record, an AFL interview. I'm Tim Capper from arenafootball.com. With us this episode, we have the head coach for the Cleveland Gladiators, Ron Selesky. You have one heck of a career here, Coach, but first, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks, Tim. Appreciate you having me on. And, it's been a great ride. I mean, it's been up, it's been down. Thankfully, there's been more ups than the downs, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Now, those who don't remember, 2014, you were the assistant coach of the year, and that was one heck of a year that you had with the Cleveland Gladiators, and we'll be talking about that here in a couple of minutes. You have been everything in this league. You've worked with so many names in the AFL, Coach, and I mean, you have been, a defensive coordinator with Columbus, with Grand Rapids, obviously with Cleveland, director of player personnel with Tampa Bay, Grand Rapids, and Cleveland also again. Head coach multiple times in AF2 and obviously the AFL. First thing I want to ask you, though, is that why coaching? Why did you move into coaching?
That's a good question. It's never really, to be honest, never really something that I've asked myself just because it just kind of came naturally. Mm-hmm. To give you kind of a quick version, back in 1996, 1997, we were living in Tampa. And I was actually working at FedEx, and I was helping out the guy that was my agent when I played, a guy named Steven Herskowitz from Houston, Texas. And I was kind of just doing some scouting for him, trying to find him guys, et cetera, trying to place guys, mainly placing guys in arena. And I remember this was during the offseason, right after the 97 season. I met with Doug Kay, and you probably remember.
Yep.
Because Doug was coaching with Arizona at that point, but he lived in Tampa. He lived in Tampa during the offseason. His wife was in real estate, and he actually lived literally right around the corner from me. And there were a couple local guys that we were trying to place. I invited him to take a look at the guys in a workout. He was talking to me after, and he said, "Why are you wasting your time with this agent, blank, blank, blank? You need to get into coaching." And so he called Coach Markham, and that's how it all got started. This was the off season between the 97 and the 98 seasons. And that was as good a place as any to start, to learn the game, to be able to, at times just sit there and watch the way Coach Markham would network to find players. And he had coached, obviously, for a long, long time, been a multiple championship winning coach in the AFL, but also coached Division I college ball, mm-hmm. coached in the World League of American Football, coached in the NFL as well, coached in the USFL. So he had a network of guys that he could call, scouts, personnel guys, to find out about a player. So to just kind of be able to watch the way that he did business and built his team and managed his roster, for me just getting into the business, was that experience was worth its weight in gold. So it just kind of started from there. And then I think probably the thing that I like best about the AFL that kind of keeps it exciting and fresh is that you're coaching, but more times than not, either when you're the head coach or if you're in a player personnel role, you're going out and you're finding the guys, and then you're coaching those guys too, which if you think about it, compare us to the NFL and the CFL.
Yeah.
Those guys, they don't get to do that. Coaches, by and large, don't get to quote unquote pick their players. Mm-hmm. We in our league, we still get to do that. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about arena football.
Now, you talk about Coach Markham. What was it? Was it easier to be a director of player personnel with Coach Markham, or was it easier to be an assistant coach under Tim Markham?
I wouldn't say that either of those roles were easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would pick one over the other as being easier than the other, because I mean, if you know Coach Markin, there could be times where he could make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Right.
But he was, I mean, probably the one word that I would use in his style of coaching and working with his staff is, and this might surprise you, but the word that I would probably use is fair. I mean, he wasn't that guy where if something wasn't going right, he wasn't going to dress you down in front of the team. He might do that in the office. He might do that in the staff meeting.
Right.
But he was never going to do it in an environment or in a context where it jeopardized your status in front of the team.
Okay.
So, and I mean, he was always very clear in his expectations too. So, that sometimes I've learned along the way, and some of my stops can be challenging, because you'll get people, and I'm not going to name any names, but
right,
that will tell you one thing one time and then come back and say, no, that's not what I wanted. And okay, but that's what you said. And so, I mean, it just creates a lot of confusion, obviously, and breaches trust and things like that, things that are critical to building a winning team.
Right. Now, those of you who followed you in the AFL, this is going to be your third head coaching job in the AFL. What some of the fans may not know is that you are actually also a head coach in the AF2 with the Louisville Fire in 01, the Albany Conquest in 02, and the Birmingham Steel Dogs for 2 years in 06 and 07. But I want to talk more or less about your head coaching history in the Arena Football League. The last time you were a head coach in the AFL coach was kind of a very unique situation. You were the head coach for the Carolina Cobras back in 2004 for the last 6 games. Before that, it was with the Buffalo Destroyers in 03 for one season. But talking about those 04 Carolina Cobras and being a head coach, in your coaching career, how did that team survive 3 head coaches in a single year? I mean, it's something that's unprecedented, really, in pro football.
Right. And if you think about that, I mean, it's interesting bringing that up, Tim, because, I mean, those final 6 games of that season in 2004, I mean, if I had to rank, like, each season that I've coached,
mm-hmm.
as far as from top to bottom, as which were my personal favorites. For me, it's probably a very close tie with maybe the 2014 season in Cleveland, a slight edge over my 2002 season in Albany.
Okay.
But then right there below it are those last 6 games in 2004. And yeah, it was a very different situation. I was not expecting to be named the head coach whatsoever. John Gregory had taken over for Eddie Kayat after 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
We were 2-4, had lost one of those games. Time had expired. The Austin Wranglers go for 2-point conversion to win the game by 1 point, and they convert on the play. And then we had 2 of those other 3 losses were by a touchdown or less. So we were 2-4, could have easily been 4-2. Ownership makes the decision to let Coach Kayat go. John comes in, he takes over the head coach, and we win the first game against Tampa. And then he lost the next 3 in a row, and we just did not play well in any of those 3 games. We get back, I want to say it was from Indiana playing the Firebirds, might have been John's last game. And I get a phone call, Daryl Harbin, who was our GM at the time, and he says, we're letting John go, and we're gonna make you the head coach. And I said, okay. I said, can I bring in a couple more coaches? He said, no. So I'm thinking, all right, how am I going to do this?
Now, did you pull double duty, coach, that year? Because you were your defensive coordinator at that time. So did you pull double duty as being head coach and the defensive coordinator?
To an extent, yes. Here's what I did. So the 2 coaches that were left were actually there was one other coach left, and this is a name you'll probably remember too,
mm-hmm.
Ray Yock.
Yep.
Okay. I actually, when they asked me to take over, I let Ray go. And they said, well, that's fine, but you're not going to be able to bring in anybody else. They were still going to have to pay all those guys. So it was me and Maurice Blanding, who was coaching the DBs. And so what I did was I basically elevated Maurice to the defense coordinator position, and kind of worked very closely with him to get him prepped for that. He was on the field. I still called a lot of the defensive coverages. I shifted over to offense, and then we borrowed a front office intern that had played college football at Wofford that was working in marketing, and made him our football ops guy.
Okay.
And so the last 6 games, we had a 3-man, essentially we had a 2-man coaching staff and a 3-person football staff. We went 3-3 and came within a hair of going 5-1 too. And it was really neat to see the way the players just kind of rallied around each other. I mean, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But we got it to work, and we got the guys to buy in, and we got the guys to believe in what we were doing and in each other. And that usually doesn't happen when there's 6 games left in the season and things are going south. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, that personally for me, I mean, as good as the 2014 and 2002 seasons were, that 6-game stretch in 2004 was, for me, like I said, personally, was extremely satisfying.
Now, you're talking about 2014. As we mentioned before at the top of the segment, you were the assistant coach of the year. You also happen to have the head coach of the year with Coach Steve Tunn. How special was this 17-1 Cleveland Gladiators team? You know, obviously, it didn't end with a championship, but how special was this team? It
was, in terms of character, in terms of bonding, in terms of guys trusting each other, in terms of guys doing what we worked on during the week and taking it to the field and executing it. I don't know that I've been around a better group of guys, again, with the exception, like I said, if there was a tie or close second would be that group that I had in Albany in 2002.
Right.
But in 14, I mean, if I could put what we had into some type of a formula or put it in a bottle and sell it, you and I wouldn't be talking right now.
Right.
Because, I mean, it'd be worth its weight in freaking plutonium.
Now,
so
after the 2014 season and all the good vibes that occurred that year, you decided to take another route. In 2015, you decided to become a U.S. scout in the CFL for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So you stepped away from the AFL. But how did it compare your CFL experience to the AFL experience that you'd had?
Well, I mean, kind of a goal of mine had always been to either work at the NFL or the CFL level in personnel. The opportunity really came out of nowhere. I had met Corey Chamblin, who was at that time the head coach there up in Sask, and we had met a couple years before that and had kind of kept in touch. He's from Birmingham, where I make my home, and so we kind of know a lot of the same people. It was something that I wanted to do just for the experience to. I'd always kind of been intrigued with the CFL. It's kind of like the polar opposite of the AFL game in a lot of ways, but it's got a lot of similarities in that it's different from the traditional, or what everybody looks as kind of the staple or the benchmark of football, which at the pro level, which is obviously the NFL.
Right.
So I kind of miss coaching end of it, but being a scout and basically running their operation in the U.S. was more than a full-time job, but that's the type of stuff that I really enjoy, you know.
Right.
So unfortunately, we didn't do too well on the field in 2015, and so at the halfway point of the season that year, they let both our head coach and our GM go. You know, when head coach and GM both get fired, you're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and
Right.
it's probably not going to have a good outcome.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I was thankfully was able to land back in Cleveland, and here we are.
Now it seems, Coach, that you and Steve Tunn, I don't want to say you're connected at the hip, but I mean, you seem that you followed Steve Tunn from Grand Rapids to Cleveland. Now you're the head coach for the first time since 2004. Do you feel like you're filling his shoes after all these years as an assistant, or is it, or is it just football when it comes to replacing somebody?
No, I mean we had been together, but for people that know us, our coaching styles are very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So no, as far as filling shoes, I'm going to be filling on my size, my 13s.
Okay. Now, with potentially the bigger player pool for 2017, with only the 5 teams so far this year, how do you feel overall about the 2017 Gladiators?
Well, I think you always feel good about your team going into a season regardless. That's just how coaches are kind of wired.
Right.
But with what you just touched on and what A, was available when free agency started, and B, what we've been able to sign from that pool, if you look at our roster, we feel really good about where we're at right now. I mean, it's on paper, and obviously you have to bring your team to camp, and you got to get them to gel, and you got to get them to trust, and hopefully keep everybody healthy, and all of those variables that you try to control as a coach every single minute of every single day. But if you look at track records of the players that we brought in, you look at track records of the coaches that I've got on my staff, I'll just say that I feel really good about the situation that we're in, being roughly a month out from training camp.
And if you look at you're speaking of people that you picked up, would you rather be a head coach or would you rather be the defensive coordinator for Rashawn Kaiser?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of both.
Yeah.
So I kind of got the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
But I mean, that was one thing that we lacked last year on defense was experience. I mean, I thought we did have some good young guys, but I mean, it's one thing to bring in guys with experience. I mean, we've got guys with successful, proven experience, winning experience, and I think when you've got guys that have been there and done that, and in some cases have been in the same boat that I've been, have been close to winning championships, but haven't quite done that. I mean, you put some of those guys like Kaiser, Kent Richardson, Willie McGinnis, Brandon Tompkins, Larry Brackens, put those guys in the same room, and they look at each other and they're like, all right, guys, I think it's time.
Yeah.
So I definitely like that too.
Well, Coach, we want to thank you for joining us. We wish you all the best of luck for the 2017 season, and we hope to speak with you very, very soon.
Tim, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Definitely appreciate you giving me some time where we could sit here and talk about the great sport of arena football. Sport of arena football. Sport of arena football. Sport of arena football.